Welcome to Cake Labs. Today, the topic that we're going to talk about is product engineering, something that we do in our day-to-day business. However, this is pretty much opinionated. How we see it might not be a philosophy that works across all the products. We will present how we build software, how we build products. You're welcome to ask questions at the end of all three sessions. Today's session is structured in three 15-minute tech talks, and at the end of the three sessions, we can do a Q&A round. The way we have understood the product engineering is you come up with an idea and then you're working on that idea until it becomes a reality, and we get people on board into that product. The way we have seen it, there are two major stages in it. The first stage, before you find a fit for that product in the market. So it's before you find the product, before finding the product market fit. So there are things that you do at that stage, engineering-wise, product-wise, which are quite different to once you found a fit in the market. For instance, if you want to build a brand new product, which you don't know whether people are going to like it, it's before finding product market fit. And your engineering, your thought process, everything can be different because you don't know whether this is going to be successful. Right? You're trying out something. So if we try to put a very rigorous process in engineering for this phase, that's not going to be successful. So you need to have a very simplified process which is measurable when you're not sure of your product market fit. And once you find the market fit, once you find a market for your product, then it's a different ball game. Then you can't be as reckless as what you used to be or creative. You have to be steady and do a great job when it comes to keeping stability. So because of these two aspects, we divide any of the products that we build. We pick a category. Okay, is this finding product market fit, or is this, okay, we have found a product, we have found a market, and how should we go about it? And once you find a market fit, even in that category, we have identified two areas. One is how you sustain engineering. The other aspect is how you build a platform that takes a lot of plumbing out of your day-to-day activities, and where you focus on your platform, where that platform supports you to build products before finding product market fit, as well as the product that you have found product market fit. So I'm going to take the first one, finding product market fit, and sustaining engineering. Rona will be covering that section, and Hiranya will be covering the platform section. So I'm going to focus this mainly towards engineers. Product market fit sounds like a responsibility of sales, marketing, product designers. My viewpoint is it is not. It's a responsibility divided between those guys plus the engineers, and this is the reason. End of the day, you need to build something that at least someone would use. It's useful for somebody. This is what we go by. Finding a fit in some market. Your market is defined by the end users. So the typical question is why there is an engineering perspective to this. Everyone sees this as, okay, this is owned by sales, marketing, and product guys, but if you think of some of the very successful startups, they were found by engineers, and they were driving the product at an initial stage, and they found a fit in the market. And if you look at a typical startup team, you have one product guy, one guy doing the design of your product, quite a few engineers, and maybe you have a sales guy or maybe you don't. So your majority of your team is engineering. And you still believe, okay, this one product guy who's in the team is going to do everything for you. So that's where that we figured we need to get this thinking early on to the engineers so that they contribute from day one, and eventually you get a better product and you find the fit much faster. Okay, so let's see how to get engineers into this. And prior to that, let's look at what are the elements in, what are the variables in finding product market fit. So this is true. It's about being in the right place at the right time. That matters a lot. And it seems like something that we can't control. Okay, it's like somebody found Angry Birds, and it's being in the right place. And a lot of people think Facebook was being at the right time, right place. But let me give you some examples. Of course, we can't control time. But look at this product being built in 1996 or 7. Looks like what is Facebook today. And it was a failure. If you do a Wikipedia search up, it was started in 1996. And in 2007, 2008, it was closed down. So this is a scenario where it was too early. But the good news, yes, of course, you can't control the timing, but definitely you can control the product and the market. Right? So this is how you look at it. The product is, you decide what features goes into the product and what features that you intentionally don't build into this product. Right? If you decide to build pretty much everything, you will never ship your product. So you have to take risk, and you have to make a guess what goes in and what is left out of the product. The scoping, in other words, right? Which is something you can control. And if you only let your product designer, the product guy, to do that, you will not succeed. You need your engineers to provide feedback, and often what we ask our engineers to say, don't ask how to do this. Like when a product guy says, build a feature to sort of share this on Facebook or share this on other social media platform, don't ask how to do this. Rather ask, why do we need this? So that gives even the product guy and even the engineer now have to be convinced, okay, the reason why we are doing this feature is because either end user is going to like it, or whether we're going to get this number of people, traction, competition, whatever. There's a reason behind it. The other thing what you can control is who you're going to sell this product to. That's your market, right? You might not be able to sell it to everyone. Not everyone will buy it, but at least you can, earlier on, you can decide, okay, I'm going to sell this product to this category. And then you can start talking to them. Most of the time people think, okay, whenever we have an idea, we need to build it. You need to do lots of engineering iterations and then take it to a market and test it in the market. It's not really true. That's expensive as well, if you do lots of engineering iterations of a product and take it in front of the client. Another simple, very straightforward thing in certain cases, in our case which has proven, where you can go talk to you first define your market, which is end users. You can go talk to them all day, which is not as expensive as building something and showing them and verifying it. And that has worked for us. Might not be the case for certain other industries. But that's definitely an option, and in that case you validate your thought, your product idea, against potential buyers, people who would really pay money for this product, or people who would really adopt. So this is an era where a lot of things are free. We don't even talk about, when we talk about traction, we don't even talk about whether there are buying customers. We're talking about at least people who are willing to use this product for a while. It's that competitive. All right. So then, this is another misconception or myth engineers have. They think, okay, I got the requirement, I built an engineering solution. Now this should sell automatically. And why aren't sales guys not selling my product properly? That's because if they only focus on their solution is you define your problem in terms of requirements, and then you just build something and say, okay, why it is not a great product? So because your solution is not a product, it's much more than that. Unless you study that, you wouldn't understand what that is. All right, so at this point, anyone would understand any product that we want to try it out in the market need a good UI, UX. And that defines the end-to-end experience of the user. And that's pretty much what every product designing company is focusing on. Get a good UI, good user experience, start understanding the end user's requirements. We all do that. But my question is, can this alone nail the product market fit? If this is the case, around 90% of the case where you have a product with good user experience, they should find a market fit and they should really start selling. Our experience is this is not the only case. There's more to it. And we have gone through this cycle. We have relied totally on the user experience, and we have worked as, including myself, as engineers of building the product underneath. But then figure it out, there's something wrong. It's not getting enough traction as we need. So we need to do a little bit more. And then we were looking out for what other people have done in this area. And then a typical question engineers would ask is there a framework? Is there a solution predefined? Is there a design pattern for this? And when you really think of it, like if you listen to most of the entrepreneurs, what they say, word like I tried many times, failed many times, I failed fast, and then tried this. I started with plan A, and then I changed that plan so many times, things like that. But those are all good comments, but you can't put that into a framework. So one guy actually came up with a framework that has 4 elements to it. The user interface, application interface, data, and buyer. So I'm going to go through these, and we already have covered the UI part, and we all agree, yes, there has to be a good UI. But this is how API is going to help you. So the point here is, in a part of product market fit is getting users to create a need for users to come. That is one part of it. The other part is keeping them on your system, having a less churn where people drop out if they don't like. What APIs can do, it can connect your system to upstream and downstream, other systems in that ecosystem, where people don't have to specifically come for your product to do something. Rather, they work on a workflow of applications, and your product is embedded into that flow. Hence, they have to come into your application. And there's this psychological theory that we have looked at called flow theory. It's like when you are in Facebook, you don't feel like you are really working or doing anything. You just figure it out, okay, I have spent like 3 hours on this. Right? That's because you get into that flow. And if you design your APIs right, and if your product get embedded into a routine, a standard workflow, highly likely people are going to stay in that. So engineers need to design this API, how to consume other products, and how do you allow other products to get connected with you. So it's like user come to the workflow of step A, step B, step C, step D, and if your product is step B, every time they have to go through step B. So you keep your people, end users together. The other part of that is, since it's embedded, it's not a point product that you're offering like a much bigger value, because now you're part of a bigger system. Plus, hence it works well with product A and B. You can tap into the customers of product A and B. Right? So that's another way of getting more traction. Moving on the data, this is again very simple stuff, but it takes a while for you to put things together and understand, oh, this is what it is. On the input side, yes, if you let users to type a lot, like if you look at it back in the days, if someone has to register for a system, it's like big form, it even might ask you for the blood type. Right? Now it's just name and an email, and that's it, like password, of course. So more data that you need to enter for your system, it's hard for people to adapt. They have to remember numbers and things like that. So within your system, if you can infer conclusions, user, yes, there's an input, but it already concludes something and shows there. If it is different from what user has, user can edit it. Otherwise, they take that answer. Make predictions. Even Google search predicts before you type, things like that. That actually makes people come to your system. Output is very straightforward. Where make it very clear, and I didn't find a real word for that, but the engageability is somehow make sure people can respond to it and go for more information. And for other system, make it easily available so that your system is not an island where other people also can interact with it. Last point I have on the interfaces is the buyer interface. This is quite critical. Most often, your end user is not the buyer. In our case, restaurant owner is the buyer, but the actual person who's going to use the system is the servers and accountants and other employees of it. If we don't focus on the buyer, if we don't create a channel and a way for them to discover your product, you're missing out some opportunities. So we have built a product called Cake.net. It's a search engine for food menus, and we have used a mechanism where we pre-encode the menu, like prediction kind of thing. When your menu is online, you just come, see your restaurant, if look at your menu, claim your restaurant. And that's the real merchant, the possible buyer for our downstream products like guest management and POS and so on and so forth. So that strategy has worked for us somehow. So product developed with the buyer in mind have much more competitive advantage. And there are things like free trials and all that could work on this domain. All right, so that's pretty much the framework. And I have a few more slides on some of the tips from our experience. When you're doing the product market fit, you shouldn't be building your plumbing, you should simply buy them. And the platform and the sustaining engineering might disagree with me when it comes to their point of view, but this is how you do it when you're building a product which you don't know whether this is going to be successful. Have dashboards, try to control things like whether people like this or not. Good people is a really good deal. Mistake we all could do is think that one university, one country can give us all the good people. That's wrong. Good people are everywhere, even in Sri Lanka, India, and everywhere, and in universities or without universities. And one key thing is we treat our small teams like a startup. They are on their own. They can work as an individual company to get their product out. Celebrate achievements and no superheroes. We are totally against superheroes. Use technology. Some stuff has worked really well for us. Slack, JavaScript, Mixpanels, and keep updating. I mean, can't give one list for that. And automate everything, starting with your test and builds, and this list can go on and on. All right, so with that, I hand over to Rohana to talk about sustaining engineering.